Hello and welcome back to Small Room Audio. Today you find me attempting to paint the fence, but that can wait because that's boring. So let's put these tools, which I must use later on the floor, and just have a look at my finest linen that I am wearing, which is actually just my scummiest clothes because that's what I'm going to wear to paint. Today's review is about value for money, and in particular we're talking about the Edifier R1850DB active bookshelf speakers. Important for painting because we used them last week in the garden to put the first coat on. Why? Well, the Wi-Fi went down and I needed to Bluetooth the stuff from my mobile phone to a speaker, because you can't just paint a fence without some music, right? That would really be quite soul destroying. So we used the Edifiers and we found out they were rather good. Definitely VFM. So here we have them, the Edifier R1850DB active bookshelf speakers. In this one, the right hand one, we have the amplifier and also a number of other bits such as the Bluetooth receiver and all the inputs and outputs, which we'll look at in a minute. This is the other speaker, which is passive and has a connector on the back to connect to the active speaker. If we have a look in the build, actually they're very solid. They are clearly MDF. And they're not too rattly. There's a little bit of resonance on the side there, but they're actually pretty smart. £160 gets you a nice shiny bit of wood. Look a bit like you get on sort of cheaper furniture, if you like, kind of TV stands, stuff like that. On the front you've got the grille. Now you can see where they've cut back slightly here because we're not using magnets, we're using old-fashioned pegs to keep the grille on. But actually I think with the grille on they look quite attractive. When you've got the grill off, you can see we've got a soft dome tweeter up the top here and a 4-inch paper woofer and a front ported port there, which means that it's easier if you want to put it next to a wall, although even if you don't, they are a little bit boomy. Again, we'll talk more about the sound a little bit later on. So this is the powered one. So here you've got the attached at all times power, which feeds in or just off the standard plug. And then on the back you've got more interesting bits and pieces, such as at the top here we have 2 tone controls, one for bass and one for treble, and then here we have source selection by clicking that in, or volume by turning it to the left and the right. Now actually the standard EQ is not bad for these. If I was to change it for my taste, I'd probably dial down the bass maybe just a little bit and maybe put the treble up just a little bit as well, just get that balance right, because they are quite bass heavy and the bass quality that comes out of these is not hi-fi, it's definitely mid-fi. So it will give you quite a good bit of mid-bass, a bit of boom, but definitely not loads of articulation and texture. Same with the treble really, it's not super refined if you turn it up, but what you do have does sound pretty good. On inputs, you have quite a few choices. You've got optical or coaxial there, and 2 analog inputs as well, if you wanted to use an external DAC or turn this into a Wi-Fi streamer. And we will show you something which actually I believe is a great value for money upgrade to these speakers in a moment. You also have a subwoofer out socket if you wanted to use that, and of course here is the other connector for the extremely long wire that you get with it, which I'll just show you here. It's super long, so if you want to run them the length of your living room, you can with this wire attached here. What do these sound like? That's really the question, isn't it? If you're going to pay £160 for a pair of active bookshelf speakers, are you going to get something that sounds naff or good? Well, the good news is they sound very good. They don't sound like a Kef LS50 Meta Wireless 2 or whatever it's called. It's called the Wireless 2, isn't it? But it's not like that. It's £160, not £2,000, and it does scale in hi-fi. So what you're getting actually is a very pleasant sounding pair of active bookshelves. In my view, I prefer listening to these more than say the more expensive Triangle Alara speakers. Now the Alaras are a lot more hi-fi, and they can do a lot more of the hi-fi aerobics, if you like, than these Edifiers. So these aren't so hot on imaging and soundstage. The Alara is better at that, and these don't really try and do things that Lilara's attempt, but I do, when you start to go into that kind of, spending a few £100 on speakers, you start to maybe want a bit more from them. At £160, I just want something to sound good and be easy to use, and these definitely do that. And actually, as I said, I prefer to take these for an application for active speakers and save the money and spend the additional on a proper, fully fledged hi-fi system that I can then swatch between the two. Alternatives, well, you'll see these are the Sonos Play 1 speakers. I'm using them for our surround sound on our system at the moment. Now, just to put value for money into perspective here, yes, I really like the Sonos system for around the house, very easy to use and sounds pretty good. However, that speaker there in its latest guise is the Sonos One SL, and that costs £179, I think. And then if we go back to the Edifier, you'd actually be getting both of these for under the price of one of the Sonos speakers. Good value for money. And actually the sound quality of two of these, for me, beats one Sonos SL. However, if you've got two Sonos SLs, it would clearly beat the sound quality coming from the Edifiers. But of course, you're paying then over £360 for something that isn't too far away when you pay £160. So again, VFM. What do they sound like? What's the sound signature coming out of these? Well, it's very easy for me to sum it up. If you've ever listened to a Bose product, you've got the sound signature here of Edifier. Now, I know what we say in hi-fi, Bose, no highs, no lows, it must be Bose, without the jazz hands. But with these speakers, yeah, all right, you're not getting the most incisive, tipped up or kind of clear sort of treble. You're maybe not getting particularly good bass down there, but what you're getting is a very nice mid-range. And it doesn't really matter what sort of music you're throwing at the Edifiers, they sound good. You stick them in the garden, just play one of them, it sounds good. At moderate levels, they sound good. Don't stress them out by putting them up to 100 decibels because they're not meant for that. But they sound good and it is excellent value for money. However, there's more to this because the story doesn't end with what is essentially a Bose product without all of the sexy Bose sort of detailing and build. These analog inputs, let's talk about them for a second, because you can get something which has just been released which makes this speaker a whole lot better, and it's this. This is the DAC32 music streamer. In that tiny box, which is made actually in Germany, not China, so just for anyone that cares about these sort of things, you get a DAC and also the ability to have an endpoint which gives you access to Bluetooth, which we already have in here, but of course it's going through a much better DAC. We also have AirPlay, so you can put things across from your phone, direct from Spotify, Tidal, etc. And you also have an endpoint for Squeezebox. Now, Squeezebox is rather brought alive by this little fella because it also then gives you access as an endpoint for Roon, which means you could use your Roon to power pretty much any speaker you wanted in the house if you put this into a powered monitor, such as this one. And if you do stick these wires in here into the auxiliary input, and what we'd stick into the DAC32 is this, which is a 5-volt power adapter, and it runs off of USB, so you can just stick that in pretty much any old USB socket and it will power it, which is great, which means it doesn't need much power at all. And then suddenly these are upgraded, significantly upgraded, to the point now where they compete sonically for soundstage and for clarity and for bass control with those triangle Alaras that I mentioned earlier. How much is this though? Surely if we're putting an additional box in and we've got this, it's going to be really expensive. No, because this is VFM. This is value for money. The DAC32 retails for £65. You can get it on Vortebox.co.uk, the Audiostore. And that's an amazing little box, which is versatile with a really good DAC input, which, as I say, transforms these and probably would transform a lot of other powered speakers. Really tiny, really good value. Together here, you've got something that's under £250, which does compete with powered speakers I've heard going upwards towards sort of £400 or £500, which is quite astonishing really if you think about it. Maybe it's not the most pretty of combinations, but certainly for sound quality it is excellent, and it turns something which was very Bose-like into still retaining that nice mid-range that you get from a sort of Bosey product into something which is much better, and that's just from a tiny little box. That aside though, if you didn't want to invest in the DAC32 and you just wanted to invest in the Edifier R1850DB or the R1850DB, then you wouldn't be disappointed at all for paying £160, because these speakers really are great, and I would recommend getting a pair if you want a secondary pair of speakers that you just want to be able to move around with you wherever you are in the house, whatever you're doing, whatever sort of housework, whether you're painting the fence or if you're painting indoors or in fact cleaning the toilet. Whatever you like, these would do you absolutely no harm to buy and enjoy. It would be a lot cheaper than getting into the Sonos infrastructure and sort of ecosystem, if you like, and you can very easily stream to it from Bluetooth. What an excellent value for money pair of speakers, highly recommended for what it is, and I think you'll enjoy them very much with a beer in hand out in the garden. Job's a good one. Anyway, if you like today's review, please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here very soon.